Okay, let's talk about precinct phone banking. Now, in a traditional phone bank, which is established by a candidate or a party apparatus, we have volunteers that show up and phones and lists are provided at the phone bank. Typically it's set up in a business or some kind of rented office place that has many, many extension phones and in a central location where you can keep all the lists together and do all the processing. As a precinct coordinator, as a precinct chairman, you won't be able to necessarily have access to those level of resources, but that you are still not out of the game. Because there are two types of phone banks that are successfully used in small districts and precincts, one of which is called the cell phone bank. Here, volunteers will bring their own cell phones to the phone bank, or others will volunteer their cell phones. Typically, the people that do that are those who have unlimited calling plans. That's what's best. What this does for you is that you're now using those cell phones at your location. It can even be a home in your district. It can be around a kitchen table, for that matter. You can have your people making the phone calls, and it overcomes the lack of access to facilities with a large number of extension phones, because each cell becomes essentially an extension. Next, it requires a little bit of financial and time commitment of your volunteers, because they have to bring their own cell phones, and if they do get charged for it, they have to be willing to do that as part of the cost of taking their precinct. If they have unlimited calling plans, they're paying a little more for that, but it can be very beneficial in this type of operation. The thing I like about the cell phone bank is tabulation occurs on site, just like a traditional phone bank. The precinct chairman can keep the records right there and tabulate and enter them into the computer after each shift of phone banking. It's a very powerful way of getting the message out by phone. Virtual phone banks. This is another way to do this. I have successfully used this in city council campaigns, where you email lists to volunteers who call from their own homes and then return the completed lists by email, and they return the uncompleted lists. From that, you then take the parts that haven't been done or the things that need follow-up, and you bundle those back up and email them out to another set of volunteers who does the same thing, and then the cycle repeats. This is the most inexpensive to do. However, it is also the hardest to coordinate, and it's the most difficult to tabulate. But I recommend both of these methods to you for using the phone to coordinate your precinct and to win on election day. Now let's talk about precinct yard signs operations. First thing about yard signs is you're getting into this phase of the election. The yard signs are coming out. They're blossoming through the precincts like beautiful rows of flowers. We got to get these signs out. Well, when numbers of signs are limited, you want to prefer to get corner and high traffic locations. This should be obvious, but people don't always know this. Next, make sure any disadvantaged candidates get sign coverage. Put out a judge sign for every major candidate sign place. I can't emphasize this enough. When I was a precinct chairman, when people say, oh, I want the sign for the governor race, I would give them one, but I made it a requirement. They had to take 2 other down ballot signs to put out in your yard. You want to get those down ballot candidates out there, particularly if you're doing a bottom-up vote ballot campaign like we're doing now in Republican circles and in Tea Party circles. Next, putting the signs up. Cardboard signs melt in the rain and tear easily. If you have a choice between plastic and cardboard signs, try to get the better signs. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. Therefore, the just should use better signs. Next, attach large signs to fence with those plastic cap nails. Large signs are a fact of life in modern campaigns. 10 years ago, we almost never saw a large sign except on presidential campaigns and maybe senatorial campaigns. Now you're seeing large signs all the way down to school board and city council. So that means that large signs are a fact of life. So part of your sign campaign has to be finding locations for these signs and setting them up in a place where they can be seen. And if you're using the large T-rail posts like you get at the home improvement stores, make sure you get a post setter for pounding in those TNC rail signs. If you use a mallet, you're just going to smash up your hands and bang up the signs. You want one of those pounders that's a circular tube of metal with a big weight on the end of it and 2 handles. That'll put those signs in lickety-split. Next, defending the signs. Sign coordinator must run the trap lines. You've got to check the signs, make sure they haven't been damaged. Understand that 20% of your sign loss is going to be by kids fooling around. 50% of your sign loss is going to be due to the effects of weather. Signs blow away, get knocked down by storms, get hit by cars and that type of stuff. And about 30% is going to be by enemy action. You're going to have opponents and people who support the other party will take down your signs. I'm sorry that that's the way it is, but it does happen. You will lose signs, so it's important for you to plan accordingly, make sure you have enough. One other strategy, remember, on election day, the night before, go around your precinct, pick up a bunch of the signs in locations that aren't heavily trafficked so that you can put them out in the morning hours before the election on the way to the polling places to help maximize your favorite candidate's exposure. Okay, let's look at some precinct resources you have. You have your elections department, And our Dallas County Elections Department has an excellent website. From it, we can get maps, like that's where I got my precinct map. You can also get voter registration lookup. Very critical. You'll talk to people when you're canvassing and when you're doing precinct activities and say, oh yeah, I'm registered to vote. Always check. Go put their name in at the thing and see if it comes up, if they come up registered. Because sometimes you'll find you've got a real gung-ho person who isn't registered, so get them registered. Okay, other precinct resources. A lot of cities are going to these things called geographic information systems. This is the one that's used by the city of Garland. These are invaluable. This is the corner of my precinct. These color codes are how I used to break up my precinct for my block captains. You can draw this out right on the GIS, save it to a PDF, and hand it out to all your block captains. The thing I like about these municipal resources is they have the plats, the actual lots, so you can mark which houses are going to be your supporters and which are going to be opponents, where your signs are and where your opponents' signs are. They also help because by using that and the alleyways, you can figure out the walk patterns for doing your precinct walking. They're very valuable. One last thing. These things many times also have the list of sex offenders. We call it the measles map. You bring up the sex offender overlay and it shows where they all are. Make sure you're not sending children and women precinct workers to the homes of sex offenders. And also, you don't want your favorite candidate's sign in the yard of the child molester. Let the other party do that. Okay, some precinct resources. Voter lists. These can be obtained from the county election department. These lists are typically raw. That means you have to do some of the data reduction and formatting of these lists. Also, or you can purchase lists from list vendors. There's a number of list vendors in every jurisdiction, in every area. There are people who make their business selling lists of political candidates. These vary in quality. You get what you pay for. The lists are formatted to suit, but they sometimes can be a little expensive. Another source that I would categorize with the list vendors is your local party. If you are a precinct chairman elected with a political party, you can often get lists from your party. Finally, you can also get lists from online sources. These lists are more affordable. You can customize the list for your need. However, the drawback is the data is sometimes not as current as these other setups. One of my favorites is Aristotle. Oops, let me back up one. Sorry. And we'll talk about okay, so here's Aristotle.com, and this is a website that allows you to build up lists. They're like 10 cents a name, which when you're dealing with a precinct level thing, that's really quite affordable even for a new starting precinct chairman's budget. And this site will give you the kind of information you need to get out the vote. It'll also help you identify those voters that aren't voting in the contested partisan elections, but are only voting, say, in school board elections, bond elections, and like. Yes?
I wanted to point out that in Dallas County, we're going to provide that to them for free.
Okay, excellent. You know, and in Dallas County, I know the Tea Party is doing that, and the Republican organizations are doing that as well. And by the way, Democrats are doing that for their people as well. So there's, make sure you get lists. If you don't have lists, you really don't have what you need. You need your map, you need your list. If you don't have those two things, you're really starting out of the box at a disadvantage.